the humid summer of 1847, 13 members of the prominent Beauregard family died within hours of in their Garden District mansion in New Orleans. The official records buried deep in the Louisiana State Archives list the cause as sudden fever, but the hastily scribbled notes in the margins tell a different story. Dr. Armand Thibodeau, the attending physician, wrote in his private journal that he had never witnessed such synchronized agony, and that the symptoms bore no resemblance to any known disease. The victims' fingernails had turned black, their tongues swollen purple, and their final screams echoed through the mansion's halls until dawn. What makes this case even more disturbing is that every single death occurred 90 minutes after the family's traditional Sunday supper, and the only person in the house who survived was Violet, the head cook in the kitchen for over a century and 70 years. This tragedy has remained one of New Orleans' most carefully guarded secrets, hidden behind a wall of shame, fear, and deliberate silence. But tonight we're going to uncover the truth about what really happened in that kitchen and why an entire bloodline disappeared in a single evening. Before we continue with the story of Violet and the Beauregard massacre, make sure you're subscribed to our channel, because stories like this one are exactly why we dive deep into America's darkest forgotten histories. Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments what state you're listening from. We love connecting with fellow mystery enthusiasts from across the country. The truth about that fatal Sunday began years before the first drop of poison touched aristocratic lips, rooted in a cycle of cruelty that would eventually demand its due. New Orleans in 1847 was a city of stark where magnificent mansions rose like monuments to wealth, while the foundation of that prosperity rested on human bondage. The Garden District, where Spanish moss, draped over wrought iron balconies like funeral shrouds, housed the city's elite sugar plantation owners, cotton merchants, and shipping magnates who had built their fortunes on the backs of enslaved labor. The Beauregard mansion stood as one of the district's crown jewels, a 3-story Greek Revival masterpiece with towering Corinthian columns that seemed to scrape the Louisiana sky. Octave Borey had inherited both the house and the family's vast sugar plantation from his father, along with a reputation for being what polite society called a strict disciplinarian. And what his slaves knew was something far more sinister. At 43, Octave commanded his household with the same iron fist he used to rule his plantation. His wife, Celeste, a delicate woman from a prominent Creole family, had long ago learned to turn a blind eye to her husband's cruelties in exchange for maintaining her position in society. Their 4 children, Etienne, 19, Margot, 17, Felipe, 15, and little Amélie, just 8, had been raised to view the enslaved people around them as property, no different from the fine china or silver candlesticks that adorned their dining room. The mansion housed not just the immediate family, but also Octave's younger brother, Auguste, and his wife Lucille, with their twin sons, Henry and Louis, both 14. Auguste served as overseer of the plantation's business affairs in the city, while Lucille fancied herself a patron of the arts, hosting elaborate salons for New Orleans' cultural elite. Completing the household were Octave's elderly mother, Grande Mère, who at 78 still wielded considerable influence over family decisions, and Celeste's spinster sister, Tante Félicité, whose sharp tongue and sharper eyes missed nothing that transpired within the mansion's walls. In this world of privilege and power lived 26 enslaved souls, each bearing the invisible scars of their bondage, but none bore heavier scars than Violet. Violet had been born in the mansion slave quarters in 1823, the daughter of Essie, the previous head cook, who had died of exhaustion when Violet was barely 14. From that tender age, Violet had been thrust into the role of feeding the very family that owned her body and soul. She possessed an almost supernatural skill in the kitchen. Her hands seemed to know exactly how much spice to add, how long to let the roux darken, and which herbs would transform simple ingredients into culinary masterpieces that earned the Beauregards praise throughout New Orleans society. But Violet's talents came at a price that few in the house understood. She worked 18 hours a day, rising before dawn to prepare breakfast and collapsing long after midnight once the last dish had been cleaned. Her small windowless room in the servants' quarters contained but a straw mattress, a single change of clothes, and a small wooden cross that had belonged to her mother. What made Violet's situation even more unbearable was her unique position in the household hierarchy. As head cook, she was expected to maintain the family's reputation for hosting the finest dinners. Yet she was forbidden from tasting the very food she prepared. She knew the texture of every sauce by sight, the doneness of every roast by smell, and the sweetness of every dessert by intuition alone. This cruel irony wasn't lost on Octave, who took perverse pleasure in reminding her while she created food fit for kings, she would eat nothing but scraps for the rest of her life. The other enslaved people in the household looked to Violet with a mixture of respect and pity. They respected her skills and the small privileges her position afforded. She was rarely whipped, never sent to work in the cane fields, and sometimes received cast-off dresses from the ladies of the house. But they also pitied her isolation, for her demanding schedule left little time for the friendships and small moments of joy that made their harsh existence bearable. Among the household staff was Samuel, the stable master's son, who at 28 had caught Violet's eye. Despite the dangers such attraction could bring, their stolen glances across the courtyard and whispered conversations in the kitchen after midnight had blossomed into something deeper. Though both knew that love was a luxury slaves could rarely afford, Samuel dreamed of somehow purchasing their freedom and starting a life together in the free territories, but on a plantation where a strong field hand might earn his master $50 a year in profit. Such dreams seemed as distant as the stars. There was also old Moses, the butler, who had served the family for over 40 years and whose bent back and graying hair told the story of decades spent bowing to Beauregard demands. Moses had developed an almost supernatural ability to anticipate the family's needs, appearing with wine before it was requested and knowing exactly when to make himself invisible. During their more private conversations, his loyalty to the family was legendary among New Orleans society, though those who looked closely might have noticed the cold fire that burned in his ancient eyes. Young Lily, barely 16, worked as a lady's maid to Celeste and her daughters. Her beauty had not gone unnoticed by the men of the house, and she lived in constant fear of the attention such notice might bring. She moved through the mansion like a ghost, trying to remain invisible while performing her duties with the perfection expected of her. In the stables worked Thomas, Samuel's father, whose knowledge of horses was matched only by his understanding of how to survive in a world designed to break him. Thomas had outlived 3 masters and buried 2 wives, learning long ago that the key to survival was never letting your true thoughts show on your face. The mansion's daily routine followed a precise schedule that had been established over decades. Breakfast was served at 7 sharp, with the family gathering in the morning room overlooking the garden. Lunch occurred at 1 o'clock, often featuring guests from New Orleans society who came to discuss business or social matters. But it was the Sunday supper that represented the crown jewel of the week's dining. Every Sunday evening at 6 o'clock, the entire extended family would gather in the grand dining room beneath the crystal chandelier that had been imported from Paris. At tremendous expense, the table, which could seat 20, would be set with the finest china, sterling silver, and crystal glasses that caught the candlelight like captured stars. These Sunday suppers were sacred to the Beauregard, a time when business was set aside and family bonds were celebrated and strengthened. For Violet, Sunday suppers represented the culmination of her weekly efforts. She would begin preparing on Friday, selecting the finest ingredients from the French market, planning a menu that would showcase her skills, while honoring the family's Creole heritage. The meal typically consisted of 7 courses, a light soup fish prepared with delicate sauces, fowl seasoned with exotic spices, multiple vegetable dishes featuring whatever was freshest from the garden, elaborate meat courses that demonstrated both her skill and the family's wealth, and finally, desserts that were works of art, as much as food. The family's Sunday ritual was as predictable as the sunrise.